Andy Chatham, and hopefully I'm going to have some slides up here. How are we looking? Can you hold this?
All right, so looks like we're encountering some technical issues for now, so maybe we could give a few more minutes for our technical team to solve it. So, should we try it one more time? All right, so it looks like we're encountering some technical issues for the PPT right now. So since our technical team is trying to solve the issue right now, so in the meantime, I would like to give all of our guests a little heads up about our presentations. So is it ready yet? Okay, good, all good. Should we all give a big round of applause to Andy one more time?
Right.
All right, finally, over to you.
All right, I lost 3 minutes, so this is going to have to be fast. I'm going to give a little bit of a different perspective than Abai. He talked quite a bit about helium, which is an inspiration for the project that I founded a few years ago called Demo. I'm going to take it back even further and talk about what is infrastructure, why do we need it, what's important about it, give you some mental models for how to invest and build on top of these infrastructure networks, and then we'll talk a little bit about DPIN and then what I'm particularly very excited about, which is people building apps on these networks, things that couldn't exist before. Who am I? Why should you care? I've spent about 10 years building mobility infrastructure. I've built autonomous vehicle systems, electric charging networks. I love trains. You know, there's a lot of infrastructure in my background. Some of these systems rely on really deep layers of infrastructure. So in order to make a robo-taxi system work, for example, you need a modern electric grid, redundant communication networks, road signals, finance and insurance products to be able to manage the risk, local cloud compute, data, localization technologies, all of this stuff needs to come together seamlessly in order to enable a next generation application like a car driving empty around San Francisco. So we're going to take it into the past. We're going to get on our magic AI generated train and go into the past of the infrastructure world and really use that to get some perspective. The infrastructure around us really defines our experience of being in a city like Hong Kong, which I think looks more like the city on the left. But if we make the wrong choices today, we could wind up in the city on the right where we have too much traffic. The day-to-day experience of living in a place is very unpleasant. And I think we've come up with some techniques to make sure that doesn't happen. So let's do a quick definition of infrastructure. We have hard infrastructure, things like pipes that carry water, the electric grid. We have soft infrastructure, things that maintain the state of our society, things like educational institutions, the post office, the Department of Motor Vehicles. All of these things combine in order to allow us to have the things that make our life good. They're really the things on the bottom of the pyramid here, like what makes us happy on a day-to-day basis really doesn't matter if we don't have food, water, data coming to our cell phone. And this is the opportunity, is really to allow the things at the top of the pyramid to exist because we have good foundations underneath us. And in the last 20 years, we've created a new category. It's digital infrastructure. It's really starting to take on a lot of the work that happened at the soft infrastructure layer above and maintain state that becomes available to people globally. And this is a new thing. This is a thing that did not exist 30 years ago. And AWS, Visa, Bitcoin, all examples of things that are essentially digital infrastructure that has a different set of properties around what it takes to build and also who can access it and build on top of it. So everybody is really into meme coins these days, and I'm going to draw a parallel to the infrastructure world and explain a mental model that I have, which is every infrastructure project starts out as a meme. So in the US, we have this saying, in the 1860s, it was go west, young man, go out there and dig some gold up in California, and 30 years later, we had a railway across the entire country. The information superhighway became a meme in 1983, and now we have a global network of interconnected fiber cables delivering gigabit data speeds to us all over the place. And this is a good example of how science can improve the throughput of digital infrastructure. So the information superhighway meme got so popular that everybody went out and built so much fiber, and then a scientist figured out how to send 10 times as much data over that fiber and created enormous financial catastrophes for the company that had built out all of that infrastructure. But then we got YouTube, and we got all these other streaming services that use this really cheap infrastructure in order to deliver next generation apps. Tesla started out as a meme. Back in 2006, Elon Musk published the secret Tesla Motors master plan, and now you can drive autonomously across the country for $300 in the US using a network of superchargers that they built. And this is a graph of their stock price. I think Tesla stock is somewhat of a meme stock these days, and he tweeted out the master plan 5 years before they went public. And this is also an example of how when apps get big enough, they can actually become infrastructure. And this is kind of like a new thing for digital infrastructure, which means like when you have a battery pack, the quantity of battery packs you have has a quality of its own. And that if you get enough battery packs together, the folks at Arcane will tell you, you can actually create a new type of application for the grid. And that's where we're starting to be today, is these new types of digital infrastructure are being grouped together and used to create new types of applications. Another thing that we have at our disposal today is all these Web 2 marketplaces that have brought supply online. So now we have all these vehicles driving around every major city, responding to dynamic price signals. The chart on the left shows the solar eclipse that's happening in the US. Everybody who's brought their house online and made it legible to a marketplace like Airbnb is fully booked if they're in the path of the eclipse. And this is dynamic supply that did not exist 10, 15 years ago. And people are really just starting to figure out what to do with this new type of infrastructure. And now we have the Web3 world, which has really accelerated the ability to form capital around some of these ideas. And so, yesterday, I think, or maybe this week earlier, it was finally confirmed that the dog with the hat is going to be on the Sphere in Las Vegas. And I think you're going to start to see people create these memes that actually become new types of infrastructure. So maybe in the future, we'll have one of the spheres that gets built because it started out as a meme coin in a new city or some other crazy idea like this in the future. And we have new types of infrastructure that are available, things like wallets and identity systems. The project I started, Demo, has an identity system that we've created for cars that assigns them digital identities and starts to make their data more legible. And of course, all of the wallet infrastructure available today is something that people are really just starting to figure out what to do with. And it follows this pattern, and this is something we've been hitting on here a little bit, which is a new app comes out, and then you have a bunch of infrastructure built in order to support that app. So the light bulb existed before the electric grid, and then now we have Sam Altman and Satya Nadella getting together 100 years later and building a $100 billion supercomputer that's going to use 50 gigawatts of power. And this all really happened in the span of about 80 years. This feedback loop is relentless. It's always going on. There's hundreds of different overlapping infrastructure arcs that are combining to be able to create new types of applications. And this is something that you can go super deep on, and it's basically a limitless rabbit hole, so I'm not going to use up the rest of my time there. But another thing to think about is that as we've created this digital infrastructure, we've also built a society that is more dependent on it and at more scale. So one of the things I worry about, a little bit of a cautionary tale, is that I think we're kind of moving towards a world in which we've exposed ourselves to these systematic risks because we've centralized a lot of the digital infrastructure that used to be very decentralized and created a risk kind of like the 2008 financial crisis where we don't really know the interdependencies, and that's also, I think, an opportunity for a lot of the builders in the space. And we're nearing this phase, Vitalik Buterin calls it the end of crypto's childhood. And this is such a perfect quote, I had to put it up here, which is, we have all the tools we need, and it's really time to start building useful applications with those tools. And everybody has always talked about, well, we're in the infrastructure phase, and it's time to extend crypto beyond finance, use the technology to build a more free and open tech stack, not just a financial stack. And so that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my time talking about. Is like, what are those applications? And we have a few of them. We've already heard from Abai today. Warpcast is becoming very popular in the social media space. Obviously, Demo is a project that I'll get super deep on the application layer after this. And all of these things are really starting to come together in a way that was somewhat unexpected, given that when this chart on the left was made, it was about 2008. So nobody had even imagined these things, 2018. Nobody had imagined these things happening in 2018. And yeah, so these networks are also starting to combine and create new types of applications. Demo and Helium have a product that works together. We send data back to Helium about the performance of their network. We also pay the Helium network for access, and that allows us to create a new type of resource, and it's operating at a global scale, tens of thousands of devices at this point. And DePIN as a whole is starting to cross the chasm from experiments to sustainable use. And this is something that takes quite a while, but it will happen very quickly once it starts to really fit and hit. And one thing that's clear is like a lot of the projects on the left, this is a list that comes from Sal, who you'll hear from later. A lot of the projects on the right here are less than 5 years old, starting to produce like transparent revenues on chain. And it really takes about like $10 million in 3 to 5 years to get a combination of a hardware and software product that actually works, and then a functional network that other people can build on top of. And I think that there's still room for about 1,000x increase in scale in some of these markets. And I'll talk specifically about automotive because that's what I care a lot about. And one important quality to think about when you're trying to make an investment decision, both of your time or your money in a DePIN network, is like, how big is the incentive to build on this network for somebody else? And in the case of Demo, the automotive market is absolutely massive. It's 5 times bigger than all of consumer electronics combined. And even at the scale of just 75,000 cars on the network, like that's conservatively about $1.6 billion worth of cars that are driving around every day for millions of miles and generating spend on fuel, insurance, maintenance. I'll talk about some of these categories and what you can actually build with the data that's now being aggregated from these cars. And one common thread that you're going to hear across the entire space is that if you can increase the productive coordination, you can create new types of markets, and that's where like a lot of the value is to be created and eventually captured by businesses. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the future, what that looks like, some of the application categories I'm excited about building on top of Demo, funding on top of Demo, and a way to think about this is the net new thing that we're creating here is the ability for somebody to access this data resource that they couldn't get before, and for developers to do that across any car. And that's something that is really, really important to internalize, is that this is a new thing that did not exist. And sure, like Teslas have an app, Tesla has a bunch of data from your car, but there's no protocol that gets you data from any car, and there's no open and permissionless system that allows you to invest your time and money creating a service and a business on top of that. So there's a bunch of like greenfield opportunities here, things that I think are criminally underinvested in, and it's one of those things that is very early, so it's a good time to get excited about them. And one thing that we're already seeing people start to do is take the aggregated data from Demo and make really cool visualizations with it that are early indications of like, here's what you could actually do with this network at a greater scale. So this is people charging their Teslas in North America over the course of one day a year ago. And you can see fast charging sessions spinning up. You can see trickle charging sessions taking a long time. And this data set is always and only getting better, and people are starting to do real-time things with it, like figure out how to optimize the electric grid, provide better incentives for charging, that type of stuff. The combination of the identity of a car, real-time connectivity, and compute really means that you can start to create new markets for everything. That's one of the common threads that we see people pursuing on the application side. And over the course of its life, a car will drive around. You spend $40,000, $50,000 for a car when it's new, and then over the course of that car's life, you spend $100,000 keeping it on the road. And all of those transactions can be made more effective and easier for you as a consumer with better data. And so these are things that I'm super interested in, excited about funding on top of the network. And if you're building in any of these categories, I want to help you. Having context about these machines is also very useful for creating new AI products. One of the things that you realize when you start to mess around with these new AI tools out there is that they need context about the real world, and the easier it is for them to access data about something, the better consumer experience you can present on the other side. And once you have this open marketplace of services and you make them legible to AI as well, you can start to propose transactions and things for people that you couldn't otherwise propose. And that's a category that I think is just starting to hit the market. And you can take a transaction like I need to get new tires for my car and know exactly when the person is about to make that transaction. And also you can help them close it on the other side as long as you have those two things legible. And that's something that really is just starting to be possible on Demo today. There's also the opportunity to just optimize the throughput of the transportation system as a whole. And this is something that is like really hard to grok, but there's a lot of geometry problems in mobility that go back to like, you look at the Teslas and tunnels thing that they're building in Las Vegas, and you'd actually need about 325,000 of those vehicles in order to replicate one subway line in New York City. And that's something that I think that equation can be improved over time with better data from the vehicles. PowerPod is building an overlay on the charging networks. We're working with them to make it easier for them to get their solution to market and also provide distribution. Back to that chart before, this is one of the applications that can be made much more effective with the real-time data that we have from Demo. Better base map data and location services is really needed for all types of depends, and this is where the infrastructure can start to overlap and produce a net new type of application category, whether it's mapping parking garages for autonomous vehicles, or producing proof of location services like Foam does, or something like GeoNet, which allows people to correct GPS signals down to a centimeter and enables new types of robotics applications. These are all things that we're very excited about on Demo and interested in accelerating because it makes applications on our network a lot easier to build as well. I'm very passionate about turning government agencies into smart contracts, and I think that's very relevant because government also funds a lot of the mobility infrastructure, whether that's a transit system or a bus network out there. There's some interesting data standards that have been developed, and we're very excited about being able to push more data into them so cities can make smarter decisions about public policy. And of course, hardware is something that we have focused on quite a bit at Demo. There's a lot of next generation solutions that we've envisioned coming to market that make cars more modular, extendable, upgradable, and also add just sort of net new capabilities to the fleet of vehicles as a whole, and that's autonomous driving, better connectivity solutions, energy solutions. All of those things are going to start to come to market, and I think people are really just figuring out what the next version of the car looks like, and I think it's going to be modular and upgradable. Verified data from cars is really important if the cars are driving themselves on public roads. And there's some pretty good examples of why, and a lot of that comes down to an incident like this, where somebody cuts you off on the highway, and you need to figure out exactly what happened in this moment. Of course, the guy on the right is cutting you off, and that's a problem. But if you look at this moment right here, the self-driving car should have already been slowing down, and yet it's still going 64 miles an hour. And so that's a situation where you have to go back into the data and figure out, why did the algorithm not detect the car cutting it off faster? Who's responsible? Who should pay for that? And these are really complicated problems that if you punt the issue of trust up to the level of the car maker, we're going to wind up with a very brittle system where Tesla or GM or Ford really control information that should belong at the edge of the network in the hands of the owners. And so people being able to use a system like Demo in order to solve problems like this is one of the things that I'm most excited about now that we've gotten to kind of like the initial scale of the network. So that's it. I'm well over my time. But you can find me on Twitter or on Farcaster. I'm at AJ Chatham. Please reach out. The things that I'm very excited about are people building apps on Demo, people contributing to the Demo protocol. Anybody who's thinking about UX and design improvements for Web3 as a whole, I think that's still tremendously important for getting more people on board. And of course, adding IoT hardware to Demo. And if you want to build on Demo, I will do whatever I can to help you. Also, some further reading here if you want to check that out. I hope they post this online, but hit me up if you want any of the material that went into this talk. Thanks, everybody.